Hi everybody! Welcome to this episode of Beyond the Label podcast. I am Leanne, your host, and today we have a very, very special guest, Natalie Chan. She is the founder of OWN Academy, and if you guys have not seen it yet, I have appeared in several OWN Academy videos, and thanks to her. So she will
check
now...
this link.
Yeah, all the links. Everything that will appear. Yeah, and tell us, what is OWN Academy for those who don't already know?
Okay, well, first of all, Leanne, thank you so much for inviting. It's been a pleasure. I think we've talked about having a podcast together for years. So I'm so glad that we're now at your home in Hong Kong to do this. We were able to find each other in the same city at the same place. That's a big thing.
It really is.
It really is a big thing. It's a big thing. So OWN Academy is all about helping young people really unlock their potential by believing that today employers should be part of education and educators should be more facilitating. So we really develop a lot of career experiences that really helps young people try different careers before they choose what major they want to study. Because when you're like 15, 16 years old, you are asked some really tough questions. What do you want to be? What do you want to study in the future? And frankly, nobody has a lot of data points. So that's why OWN Academy creates a lot of different experiences and content with professionals like yourself, because Leanne is a very big supporter of OWN Academy. And we create experiences so that young people actually understand the reality of what it means to be an influencer, what it means to be in finance, what it means to be in architecture, because you do not know until you try.
Yes.
It's sort of like what we do. So we create different ways for young people to try so then they can make decisions about what they want to do. And ultimately, our goal really is wanting to create a whole new educational model, but we can talk more about that later on.
I mean, honestly, I tell Natalie this all the time, that how much I wish this existed when I was a student. Because I'm sure a lot of you would resonate as well, that you really don't know like what you want to be when you're like 15, 16. All you want to know is like, oh, where I'm like gonna party and like what I'm wearing like this weekend. And yeah, and without those real world learning experience, just taking your name.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a product name that Leanne just used, but it's a normal name for anything anyways.
Yeah, but it's so true. Like you named it so perfectly because it is real world, and after school you're just getting thrown into this without any training or any, even just like now I don't know how to do my taxes, I don't know like finance account stuff, and we should have learned that as a kid.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Totally. So it's like 100%. And I feel like what is really missing, especially in today's generation where everybody's just scrolling through, you know, what it's like to be a lawyer in 1 minute, what's it like, maybe not even 1 minute, 1 minute sounds too long now. It's like 30 seconds, a day in a life in a lawyer or in like a doctor or in like a banker. And frankly, like those highly edited videos is really not descriptive of what reality is. And reality is so much longer in time and so much like, you need so much more patience, you need so much more time. And time is not described well in like a social media kind of world. So that's why for us, it's so important to be able to create what we call like real world simulations in a way that young people can learn from professionals like yourself that are inspiring. Because frankly, I think that it takes people to unlock you, and you really need to have like a lot of access to amazing people. And I think I recall myself as a student, I really didn't have much access to these like amazing inspirational people. I don't think that I met many people that are inspirational. And I was like, when I went into the real world, I was like, wow, there's so many inspirational people out there, but they don't connect with the education world at all. So how can I bring them to connect further?
Yeah. And I actually want to ask, like, obviously we understand the concept, but for you personally, like, what sparked this journey? Like, I feel like there's a personal story here, but yeah.
I think there's always a personal story. I think when it comes to any entrepreneur starting something. So I think one of my favorite motto in life is like, be who you needed when you're young. And kind of alluded to what you were saying earlier, I just really had no clue when I was growing up. And I think, you know, I actually wanted to be an artist growing up. That was the first dream ever, is that I want to be an artist. Frankly, I'm not very good at writing. I'm not good at drawing. I'm not good at anything, but I don't know. I just feel close to the word artist. And of course, that was very early shut down by, you know, Asian parents. And
Of course.
you're only given 4 options from that on point onwards. So it's like banker, doctor, lawyer, engineer. And so I chose engineering, which I ended up loving. But then I think when I went to like choosing what job it is, I realized that I just chose what would make my parents proud, because parents always talk about what their friends' kids are doing and like how proud they are, or how they wish they are, like, you know, how they wish they had kids that are blah, 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 blah. So, you know, I wanted to choose a job that would make my parents proud.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what happened. And then I just started hating what I was doing. And more importantly, I think it's especially because I think I've had a lot of, my parents sent me to the best schools they can afford, and just having gone to the best schools, still feeling really lost coming out of university. And I felt that I'm already from a very relatively privileged family. So if I feel very disconnected to what I can be, like how would all those other people that don't even have half the resources feel? So I think that's kind of what really inspired me to see this kind of gap between education and the reality, and just wanting to somehow solve that gap and bridge that gap. Because I feel like there's a lot of problems in the world, and I chose education not because I fell in love with education, just because I thought that education was the root cause for a lot of problems in the world. So I feel like if I can solve the education problem, I can solve a lot of problems in the world through that. So I think that's kind of what inspired me to create OWN Academy, and to realize that actually in education, there are 3 main things that I want to solve. Because I did my Master's of Education as well in Hong Kong U, and I studied the specializing of like designing powerful learning environments.
Wow, that's so specific.
Yeah, it's very specific. It's all about like designing powerful learning environments. And what that means is like, you know, how do you unlock the motivation of learning? And motivation really comes from 3 main things: kind of the environment of where you learn, the content of what you're learning, and who's teaching. And I just feel like we can redo those things better. I feel like environment should be taking kids out of the classroom. The world is our classroom, really.
Oh, yeah.
And then like when it comes to the teacher, I feel like professionals should be our teacher. Why are we not really finding these professionals as teachers? And then in terms of content, it's like learning about what professionals do.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how the whole concept of OWN Academy really started. It's just that I want to create that world. How can I create that to make learning more relevant to young people?
No, for sure. And when you mentioned that just by doing education can solve many problems, like I personally, I so feel that. And like you said, coming from like an already more privileged background, like we have so many resources, but being a student and not knowing what to do, I think it's such a universal thing. And it's like the school systems all over the world are trying to like tackle this, right? But obviously like in our own generation as well, like when we were younger, there was not as much like mentorship programs, internships, and I just feel like the kids nowadays are so lucky to have all of these. But still, like it's still such a big problem, because in my own journey as an entrepreneur, I had to like trial and error so many times. And what I did, like event planning, there was actually no course on event planning even at university. I think you need to go to like a performing arts school to find something remotely relatable. I know the courses that you provide, like DJing, events production, even like mental health and like biotechnology. These are the things where you can maybe choose as a college major, but you would have no prior knowledge to that as a high school student. So how would you know this is the right path for you?
Exactly. I love how you talked about like trial and erroring. Like I think that's exactly what we're trying to create in OWN Academy, is to create a safe space where you can try and error and experiment, basically. Because you really need to experiment different things in life in order to know what you like and what you don't like. And I think that's where I feel like in the school world, everything has a grade to it. Everything is like very contrived, right? Like you do something, all your efforts are pegged to some sort of grade level.
Yeah.
Whereas like in OWN Academy, like it's all about encouraging you to experiment and fail.
Yeah.
And that's why we want to make sure that all these experiences, there's no grades. There's some sort of like way for you to evaluate and for you to improve on. But that's where we want to really complement the academic world and create something that is really just to experience, that is non-gradable.
Yeah. And for me, I personally feel like in the academic world, I think it was a little bit unfair, you know, for people like me. Like, I don't take exams well. I don't remember things well. I don't do well under like a stressful time constraint. But that is not really what the real world is like. Like, the real world is really about like building connections with people and honing those specific skill sets instead of like drilling onto like math problems. Not trying to offend any like math teachers here, but like trigonometry, I've never used that in my entire life.
Unless you're going to be an architect or you want to be a graphic designer, I think saying you can use trigonometry,
Yes.
but I really believe that you will learn what you need when you need it. I mean, of course, fundamental skills are very important. I know how to read, know how to write, know how to do like math basic, but like, I think when it comes to these like higher level courses, I think you should know the why before you go into these deeper dive in courses, right? So I think the why is really what's missing in a lot of the learning. When I was a teacher, kids keep asking me, why are we learning this, Miss Chan? And frankly, I say, I don't even know why. I don't even think we need this right now. I don't really believe in what is being taught to kids today because it's just so outdated and it's just not relevant.
I feel like other than learning, like the connection is also so important. And I know one of what you're trying to do is to build this network of industry leaders with the schools, with the students to create like internship opportunities. And also, I guess, having like the industry leaders to work together. And I think that is super important. And honestly, I really appreciate you for doing that because we don't have enough of those things.
Yeah. It's a constant uphill battle. I think like we all think it's great, but then we need to convince the schools that it's great. Because I think for us, we really want to create systemic change from a school level all the way up to hopefully in the future, like policy level. Because I know that a lot of governments now are looking into being able to implement a lot of these kind of internship structures in it. But frankly, nobody really knows how to do it. I think everybody just knows how to do it on a very kind of surface level, but it actually takes a lot of designing. It takes a lot of like structural like iteration. And I've been doing this for 7 years now. So I've like tried and failed so many times, and I'm still doing that, frankly, for us to kind of figure out what is that right kind of like concoction. I think earlier you were talking about like math and all that, like why do we need that? But I think one thing that we probably are not taught, and that's something that I really want to share, is that everybody has their own talent, but also how talent is defined, there's many different like kind of facades to it. I think one thing about it is sort of like, frequency. What kind of frequency of a person are you? Are you someone that really likes like very very quick pace? Or are you like someone like a very slower pace? And also I think every job has a type of frequency. For example, like, are you talking about project-based work? Are you talking like routine work? Are you talking about things that like change every day, like digital marketing that like you have to keep track of things on daily? So we're kind of developing this type of like ways to look at jobs that are not purely on personality. Because I think personality is one way. However, I think that it goes deeper into sort of like what vibes are you as a person.
Oh my gosh, that's so important. And we're not taught enough to be self-aware to know like what kind of environment and like the patterns that we learn best in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Knowing yourself is first and foremost the number one thing. But I think in education, it's very often, like traditional education especially, it's very like you need to be in a mold. It's actually not encouraged for you to be unique. And I think even in the Asian culture, you're not encouraged to be unique. You're encouraged to be part of the herd. You're encouraged to be like everybody else. And when you're different, you get frowned upon. When you're different, you get shunned. And it's very hard to shine through that.
Oh my gosh, I resonate with that 100%. It's like those values, that makes you a good person, basically. Like it's as simple as that. I feel like, and I think what really like I admire you guys a lot on is that I think it's actually a lesson on life. It's not really a lesson on like those specific like industries or topics, but it really is like knowing how you are as a person in different types of scenarios, how you should work with different types of people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It totally is. It's a lot of like matching and a lot of like mixing. It's like mix and match constantly. Yeah. And sometimes you think you know something, but you actually want to like try something different. Or you think you want something, you pursue that, you're like, actually, I don't like that anymore. Like it's a lot of that ongoing as well.
Okay, I actually want to ask you this question. I've been wondering myself for a while, how do you guys like make money? Can you share this?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
It's very important to know your business model, right?
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, it's been an iterative process. I knew from the very beginning that I did not want to be an NGO. I did not want to be a nonprofit. The way that we, at the moment, make money is that we create these curriculums with professionals and these real-world experiences. So then we charge the schools, and the schools pay us, and then we pay because we want to make sure that it's also sustainable with the ICs. Industry coaches, we call them. That's basically how we make money.
Okay.
And then we just create programs and then we charge the schools. Yeah, but then every school has different budgets, so then you always have to kind of like, sometimes I actually just do things pro bono as well, just to keep pursuing the message. As much as I'm not a nonprofit, we basically do nonprofit work while trying not to be a nonprofit. So it's actually really challenging because you don't really qualify for a lot of these like social funding that say foundations give out because you're not a registered nonprofit. So it's a really kind of tough area to be a social enterprise to sustain yourself that way. Yeah, it's just constantly hustling.
Right. I mean, that's really good to know because I personally feel like there's so many of us out there, and maybe some of the audience are wondering, like, when you have a message so strong and you believe in this, I mean, this obviously is such a great concept, right? And I'm sure many people will agree. But how do you actually make it work? Like, how do you actually make it into a company, into something that you can do for a continuous amount of time without being broke, basically?
Yeah, honestly, like for 3 months at a time, we would not be making any money. And then we just have this one big project that you just hope that it sustains you for the next couple months. And then you just hope that, because like when I started OWN Academy 7 years ago, it was still very, very early as like a concept of like trying to get more professionals to like, you know, teach kids and like create these different experiences. However, we were very fortunate that we had this one early adopter as a school, the American International School in Hong Kong, and we're super grateful for them. We just finished our 5th year programming with them. I mean, it takes one school to just really believe and gives you an opportunity to try. Honestly, sometimes I'm just, don't even look at my bank account. I'm just hoping that I can pay people at the end of the month. Like, I still kind of do that these days. Like, it's kind of like really, like you're just hoping that it will work. And sometimes, like, I'm not a big spender. I'm very frugal. So I really make sure that I keep track of all my expenses, like that I'm just not overspending. And frankly, you know, I've also made a lot of mistakes as well with like, you know, because the biggest cost is really on the manpower, your team members in our business, right? Because we're a very service-oriented business. So like with the people side, I've also made a lot of mistakes hiring people. So sometimes I'm like, oh my God, I just like spent all this money to train this person, and then they leave, or like it doesn't work out. Like it's just like stress. However, I think we're getting to a point where we're trying to diversify as well. So our goal coming up next is actually to create something called the One World Network, which is like the first network that connects employers with teachers as well as learners, because we want to really define very clearly what our goal is. Our goal is to actually create a next educational model that is a free education system. I think that education is a human right, and that quality education should not be only restricted to those who can pay for it. So how can we actually create quality education for everybody? And so there's a lot of like trying to figure out what the economical model is that. And so we want to be able to find, you know, amazing corporates that are committed to talent development. We also want to find amazing professionals like yourself that want to teach the students. So on one end, we be able to work with professionals like yourself to create these programs that we charge schools, but then separately for the students that would not be able to pay, then we want to charge the corporates to be able to support those underserved students as well.
Just seeing from personal experiences as an industry coach who've worked with OWN Academy so many times, it's such a wonderful experience, and you teach the student as much as they teach you. The kids nowadays are so smart to a next level that you cannot believe until you see it with your own eyes.
And the thing is, like, that's what's crazy, that they're so smart, but yet the education system has not evolved. It's like, that's why the kids are also really like dying for these type of like different learning experience and different exposure, different access. But schools are not equipped right now to actually build that access and that network for their learners.
And I feel like, I mean, it's universal that like the teachers who teach us bring what they learn from their time, you know, like from how they were taught as students. So it's very difficult, I mean, to change the whole system. But I mean, what you guys are doing is so great because you're bringing real people. I just can't stop stressing the word real.
Yeah, real people is very authentic, real, but awesome people. Not just real people, not any real people. Like, we're actually very selective with who we actually work with. But like, I think that just because you're really good at what you do doesn't actually mean that you are a great teacher and you can build relationships. So actually, whenever I meet like an industry coach, I always try to understand, like, can they relate to young people? Like, do they have that vibe? Do they have that kind of like, you know, that thing that young people will actually look up to? Because we're really looking for role models in professionals. We need to be able to have more like day-to-day people that you can touch, you can feel, you can connect with on a deeper level rather than just looking at a screen, right? So we're trying to really find those everyday people that are honestly amazing and inspirational in their own way. What's really interesting is that I recently heard that like young people today actually are not as attracted to these like really big influencer type. They feel like it's very hard to reach them. They actually want more like everyday people, right? To be relatable. So that's kind of how we're looking to find those people every day. To be able to say like, hey, every day, there's so much inspiration around you if you just look around.
Yeah, and I want to add on to that. It's not just, you know, being a role model in that specific field that you're teaching. I think like OWN Academy and the Blue Journal kind of resonate on this, not like a concept, but this value.
The DNA.
To show people where there are possibilities in life, that you don't need to conform to into a certain set path. I think for me,
Girl, that's exactly. She said it. That's all. That's all our mission of our company. It's just like you don't need to conform. I think we live in such a society, especially in Asia, that you need to conform to a mold. You need to do what was expected of you. There's so much expectation that you need to live up to. Like it's so hard to be someone that you're not. And I think that's kind of where I realized very shortly after my career in corporate that I'm just not ever going to succeed in this corporate world. To succeed in the corporate world, you need to have the kind of personality. You need to play politics. You need to like eat other dog, dog eat dog kind of concept, right?
Literally.
And I'm just not that person. And I just know that if I don't leave now, I would get sucked into this like, this whole like sunk cost fallacy, right? And I think that is where we need to take risks more. We need to be able to say like, I am going to be me. I don't want to be anybody else. Like, and be happy being you, because that's where you really start shining. And I think the moment that you realize who you are and like the purpose that you live, that is literally when everything just starts happening. And it's so magical. Like, I can't even I think I understand what you're saying. Like, I've been having these manifestations with me recently too. And it's like, you can't describe it to other people if they are not on that journey.
Yeah. I mean, I recently shared a quote on Instagram. When you're in a place where it's not right for you and you don't leave, you're actually putting your energy in the wrong place, and it's taking away that energy from where you're supposed to be. Like, you're actually not doing anyone a favor because that's not what you're meant to do. But you are taking away such great value and benefit you can put on in other areas where you are good at.
Exactly. Like, I really believe, like, actually we're just going through the OWN Academy like brand revamp and like the whole like brand vision. What is the story that we're telling? And just to share like a sentence of there is, we really believe that the world is full of interconnected problems, but that every person has a unique role to play in this very dynamic world. Everybody actually has a purpose, but you need to be able to develop the purpose. We actually at OWN Academy say that you don't find your purpose, you develop your purpose. I always tell students that, what they say is that you do what you love, you never have to work a day in your life. But I always say there's actually a second part to it that nobody talks about, is actually pursuing your passion, and being passionate about what you do actually means what are you willing to suffer for? Because there's a Latin root word in passion that stands for suffering. So passion doesn't mean that you're like, oh my gosh, so happy and so excited about what you do every day. It's more about like, what are you willing to consistently be challenged at, that you're able to keep breaking barriers and sometimes being really down. Yeah. Like, I have so many down points all the time, but you just have to, tomorrow's a new day and I'm just gonna pick myself up again. And that's what passion really means.
No, for sure. I actually always make the analogy comparing like career to relationships. It's like, if it's the right person, like like if the relationship is like worth fighting for, and then you'll be willing to sacrifice like freedom on like other things to make it work, right? And at the same time, if it is a toxic relationship, then you know when to get out before it drains you and sucks you in. It's the same thing that applies to a career, I feel.
Yeah, for sure. Like, actually applies across everything.
Yeah,
sometimes with friends, sometimes with
literally everything.
Like everything, every aspects of life. You just have to be joyful. But to be joyful, you need to know who you are and what you stand for. Yeah. Like, I think knowing your values is very important. Like, knowing what you want to fight for. Like, are you someone that want to fight for gender inequality? Are you someone that loves the environment? Are you someone that loves animals? Like, you need to know what you stand for in order for you to build from there. Because otherwise, you're just very aimless and it doesn't really help anybody.
Yeah. So I know we're now talking about keeping it up and doing what we love, right? But in the day-to-day, like, how do you actually go through those tough days? Like, do you have any physical things that you do or routines that you go through to help you pick yourself up?
I wish I can say I have a lot of routines, but I don't. I feel like I see a lot of successful people. They like have morning routine at like 4 a.m. They wake up, 5 a.m. they do gym, and then 6 a.m. they read a newspaper. I'm really the opposite of that. I'm like a night owl. I'm so productive at like 11 p.m. to like 2 a.m. That's like my productive time. I think I try to like be out of my, because I just sit in front of my computer and are on meetings all the time. So I really try to be going for a walk, or like, I love bicycling. And actually I recently moved to Singapore, as I told you. So I really love cycling around. Like in Singapore, there's like the Marina Bay and I live right by near there, and I just cycle. So for me, I just like to cycle, and I'm actually not even like a music listen person that much. I actually really like my quietness. So I just like to like sit by the water and and just stare out in greenery.
Yeah.
It's kind of my thing.
Nice. Now that you've mentioned that you live in Singapore, so Natalie is actually normally based in Singapore, right? And you mentioned that you have been nomading for around like 2 years.
2 years.
Okay, can you just share with us how has it been? Because I'm almost about to embark on this nomading lifestyle as well, and I just have so many questions. Like, I think the main thing is now that you have your own company, how do you keep yourself disciplined? You know, you're traveling with different time zones, going on flights. There must be like fatigue and days where you're just like, oh, I'm just so tired. Because I mean, I have that. So how do you keep up with the work?
I would like to say that I have a very strong formula for that, but I also don't. So I think I'm still figuring it out in many ways. However, I think going back a little bit back to like sort of who you are as a person, I think what I realized about myself is that I really desire freedom. I really desire being able to do things at my own pace, at my own time. And I think I definitely, actually part of the culture of how I built OWN Academy with my team is that not about work-life balance, but it's about work, life, and travel integration. Because in order to make all those things work, you need to basically do time management very well, right? And it's not about having a 9-to-5 job. I actually put in my job description when people look at the JD of OWN Academy is that if you're looking for a 9-to-5 job, this is not the right job for you. So
I love that.
so you have to be, because a lot of my team members are also like mothers, you know, they're at different stages of life. Everybody has their own priorities, right? I want to give people the flexibility of time to do what they want. And I want to encourage my team members actually to be wherever they want, because I think flexibility and freedom is so precious, especially when we're still young and we can like be different places. So for me, it's like I work whenever I need to, whenever I can. So then having Wi-Fi access is very important constantly. It's just finding ways that you can just integrate it and just not be like, because I'm also the person that can merge lines quite well, but I know a lot of people maybe are not they need like, you know, work is work, life is life. Travel is travel. Whereas for me, I desire a lifestyle where I can be anywhere, everywhere and be working. Like, for example, having traveled in the past year and a half, I literally would be just having, like, almost feels like I'm just having like authentic Bangkok, like Thai food just for afternoon rather than like being in Hong Kong and like going to a Thai restaurant. Because I travel so much, I sometimes forget which city I'm actually in.
I know what you mean.
And then, so actually, because the actual work still requires you to be in front of a computer. So I can be anywhere. But I think what is different is the lunchtime, is like the after work time, is that then I can go out on the streets of Bangkok, I can go out the streets of Vietnam, I can go out on the streets of like, you know, India, I can go out on the streets of anything. Like that's kind of where I want to live life. But I'm not like, you know, those digital nomads where it's like, I'm not a beach bum. So I just like to be in cityscapes. I don't mind, of course, going to like, you know, Bali, but I don't mind surfing and all that. So I just like to be able to have the flexibility to be anywhere. So actually in like my company also, there's no like set dates of holidays. You can take however many holidays you want as long as you do the work. It's all about the output. So it's just about creating a new culture that redefines what work-life travel integration means.
How do you actually balance in your traveling? Because, okay, what I mean, I think is, I feel like there's, including me and people that I've heard, is that when it comes to travel while working, sometimes it's very extreme. So it's either you very relaxed, like you get, you know, distracted by a lot of like new things. You want to go see the sights, you want to do all these new experiences. So you kind of forget that you actually have to work. Or you get extremely burned out. Because you're like, oh no, like should I really be like enjoying this time when I should have been working? So people go into that mode or be like, oh, now that I have like a new whole pool of people that I can meet, instead of like back-to-back meetings, which is my pattern actually. So how do you, because I feel like from what you shared that you can know how to navigate, you know, when I should be working and when I should like, oh, taking this like nice lunch break.
Yeah, okay. So I think there's maybe two parts to that. I think the first part is when it comes to traveling, maybe I can clarify that a little bit, because I'm not traveling just to like visit new cities and have fun. You know, I think for me, traveling, I actually try to go to a city and stay there for a month to 6 weeks time, because I actually don't like moving so much. So I'm actually there to experience the lifestyle of the city, not about trying to be a tourist. I'm actually trying to be a local, right? I think like that mindset is very different, whether you're local or whether you're a tourist, right? So I think that's one part of it. And the second part of it is, of course, you can't do everything all by yourself. Like I'm very lucky now, I have a team of 12 people that it's fully remote. So basically, like I've been able to kind of get to a stage where I can get help with my teammates. So I think that's kind of the only way that I can probably make it work, is that sometimes I can be out for like, you know, 6 hours traveling. I mean, by traveling, I mean like on the flight, while my team members are handling the different kind of like engagement. So I'm sure if I were just starting, it would probably be a little bit hard, but because I'm already 7 years into the company, I have a little bit of systems, I have a little bit of these, best practices within the company. So that's what makes it doable.
Wow, sounds amazing. I cannot wait to
Build a team and be able to have other people help, yes.
What are the top 3 advice that you would give to someone who believes in their own vision, who believes in something so strongly and they just want to start something and spread the message?
I think one thing that I learned is that when you believe in something so strongly, whether it's mostly it probably is something really great, that not everybody around you is going to celebrate you and clap for you. So you really need to find your tribe, the people that really celebrates you for those ideas. So I think starting with that, because having a community that supports you is so important. Number 2 is, I would say, talk to people that are kind of in the peripheral of what you want to do and be able to, just learn from them. Of course, sometimes it's a little bit tricky that you have to kind of make other people not feel like you're trying to like steal their idea, because I think that sometimes get into a little bit of that mix. It's really coming from maybe you're looking for a mentor that's much more senior that has already kind of gone through that. But of course, everybody's different, right? Like I like to share ideas. I feel like honestly for me, ideas are cheap. Execution is what matters. Right? So I think you have to know that like sharing your idea, like don't be so protective over your idea. And I think the more you share your idea, the more you get feedback. And that feedback is so valuable for you to kind of iterate. Because sometimes you'd be like, I think I know, until you start talking to the audience and you're like, oh shit, they don't care about that.
Yeah.
And then you kind of evolve, right? So I think those would be the 2 things. Find your tribe and also like, share your idea and get feedback.
Yeah, I just want to say that I'm really glad that you brought up how being an entrepreneur and having great ideas doesn't necessarily mean that everyone will be happy for you, because there are ill-intentioned people out there in the world, and I think it's good for everyone to be aware of that. And yeah, I think, no, you're right. Like there's gonna be so many copycats and it's gonna be okay, because essentially like you are the person, like you are your brand.
Yeah, and I think that's also assuming that you actually do the thing, right? Like I think just talking about it is not enough as well. So I'm caveating by saying that you talk to people, but you actually do it. Because if you just talk about it and then you get feedback, but you don't do it, then you're not really
it's not gonna work.
Yeah, you have to put the effort in. I'm sorry. I think one thing is also there's no shortcut. Like it takes time.
That is so true. You guys are doing so well now, so I'm so happy for you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I still feel like we're struggling every day, but thank you for saying
I know
that.
you do. Before we go to the last question, do you have any extra that you want to share, or like any upcoming news about OWN Academy, or just any like last tips?
So our biggest thing upcoming is really launching the One World Network, which is really on finding professionals that want to be teaching with us, or companies that really want to give back into developing talent with us. And we want to then look for people and companies that want to build towards this new degree structure. So if you're any of those, please do get in touch and join us. But separately, if you are an audience and you're thinking about starting something on your own, honestly, there's no better time than now to do so. And there's so much resources. It's relatively more accessible to achieve anything. But I think, Blue Journal is doing an amazing job by just giving people that kind of like support system and that encouragement, and just keep watching and connect with Leanne. Like Leanne is so approachable. Like she is the best like cheerleader, honestly, for everybody. So please do know that, find your tribe. I think Blue Journal is amazing. Hopefully OWN Academy can be an opportunity and community for you too.
For sure. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah. And we end with the same question for every guest. Can you just tell us one thing that you love about yourself?
I really love all the mistakes that I've made, and there's a lot. I used to be really embarrassed about all these mistakes that I've made, but all the mistakes just really built the foundation of who you are. And frankly, if you have had a life that is just so smooth and there's no things that have caused you disappointment or trauma, then you're not cut out to be an entrepreneur.
That's so true. That's so like straightforward. Yeah. No, absolutely. Wow. So much to like take in after this whole episode, I feel. I think it's just a lot for us to think about regarding ourselves and our future. Like, how can we make an impact, really? Oh.
Let's go. Blue Journal OWN Academy.
Yes.
We're going to make all the impact in the world together and with you.
Well, thank you so much for being here today.
No, thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for having me.
Can you just quickly share OWN Academy's like Instagram, websites, everything? It'll be like all here.
Yeah. So you can find us on OWN Academy, just OWN Academy on Instagram, or ownacademy.co as our website, or Natalie HWC on Instagram as well. You want to just get in touch as well. I'm just always very happy to just virtual coffee anybody as well. And yeah, feel free to reach out. And sometimes it actually takes reaching out. I think part of the points that we want to make earlier is like talk to people by reaching out to strangers. I think the power of asking is so powerful. Asking people, hey, Leanne, would you like to be our industry coach?
Same as my podcast. Like,
Yeah,
do you want to
exactly.
be my guest?
Exactly.
That's
It just takes asking. So just ask. Just ask people. Because people are always willing to help, especially when you have a good cause.
Thank you all for listening to this episode. And yeah, please do connect with Natalie. She is amazing. So many great ideas. And we'll talk to you guys soon.